Enter player 1.
Ah, Vault 12, the shining example of Vault-Tec's brand of ethical malpractice. Let's dive right in. Vault 12, nestled beneath the pre-war city of Bakersfield, California, was marketed as a safe haven with all the comforts of modern living. The brochures boasted luxurious accommodations, state-of-the-art water purification systems, and of course, the ultimate promise of protection from the nuclear apocalypse. If you were one of the lucky few to secure a spot, you might have believed you'd live out the nuclear war in relative comfort, sipping purified water while the world above burned to ash. What they didn't tell the residents was that Vault 12 had one critical design flaw. The vault door was never meant to close. Let's pause and appreciate the sheer brilliance of that decision. Vault-Tec wanted to conduct a little experiment on the effects of radiation exposure over time, and what better way to do that than to leave the door wide open during the Great War? It's like inviting radiation in for a cup of tea. Now let's imagine the chaos on October 23rd, 2077, when the bombs began to fall. As Bakersfield residents rushed to their designated vaults, they would have realized something was wrong. Unlike the other vaults, which sealed shut with a satisfying hiss of security, Vault 12's door stayed tantalizingly ajar. Radiation flooded in, turning this supposed sanctuary into a slow cooker for its inhabitants. For those who survived the immediate fallout, the nightmare had only begun. Exposure to the radiation caused rapid degeneration of their flesh and organs, turning them into ghouls. And let me just say, ghouls are Vault-Tec's accidental masterpiece. They're hardy survivors, living far beyond the typical human lifespan, but they also come with a side of rotting flesh and a never-ending hunger for revenge against the system that abandoned them. Vault-Tec's noble scientific pursuit had finally paid off, though not in the way anyone had imagined. Instead of your average irradiated corpse, you had living, breathing, walking reminders of the horrors of nuclear war. These ghouls eventually crawled out of Vault 12 and into the ruins of Bakersfield, where they founded Necropolis. A name so on the nose it almost hurts. But then again, accuracy is important. Now, not all ghouls are created equal. You've got your feral ghouls, who have lost all sense of self and attack anything that moves. And then you've got your sentient ghouls, who retain their humanity, at least mentally. Vault 12 produced a mix of both, with the sentient ghouls banding together to create a society in Necropolis. In the beginning, things were relatively peaceful for the newly formed ghoul community. After all, the radiation-scorched ruins of Bakersfield weren't exactly prime real estate. Most humans steered clear of the place, fearful of the ghoulification that had overtaken its residents. But then, as with any society, power struggles emerged. Enter Set, a ghoul who had an eye for control and a deep dislike for playing by anyone else's rules. Set seized power, ousting the original overseer of Vault 12, who fled north and was never heard from again. Set's reign was ruthless, and though he lacked the charm of a proper dictator, he made it work. Under his leadership, Necropolis became a stronghold for ghouls, at least those who could stand his iron grip. Of course, Set wasn't loved by all. Some ghouls opposed his rule and decided to live a quieter, less chaotic life. These ghouls, the peaceful faction, retreated into the underground sewers, preferring solitude to Set's more aggressive leadership. Funny enough, despite Set's disdain for these tranquil sewer dwellers, he still supplied them with water, knowing full well that he couldn't afford to lose too many able-bodied ghouls. It turns out even post-apocalyptic dictators have to play the long game sometimes. For years, Necropolis existed in a delicate balance. The city of the dead had its leader, its peaceful opposition, and its deeply irradiated streets. But then came the Super Mutants. These hulking abominations created through the forced evolution virus had their own interest in Vault 12. They weren't looking for a cozy underground retreat. They were hunting for the water chip, a device critical to keeping Vault 12's water supply running. Let's talk about the water chip for a second. It's the technological marvel that kept Necropolis afloat, allowing the ghouls to purify water even after the bombs fell. Without it, they'd be done for. So naturally, when the Super Mutants came knocking, things got complicated. Set, in his infinite wisdom, managed to strike a deal with the mutants. They could use Necropolis as a base of operations as long as they left the ghouls alone. It was a fragile alliance, one built on necessity rather than trust. By the time the Vault Dweller shows up, things are a little tense. Set's grip on power remains intact, but the city is under the shadow of the Super Mutants. The player has a few choices here. They can side with Set, working with him to drive the mutants out of Necropolis, or they can take a more neutral approach, ignoring Set's offers and letting the situation play out. Now this is where things get interesting from a moral perspective. The player's primary mission is to find a new water chip for their home vault, which means taking the one from Vault 12. But removing the chip would doom Necropolis, leaving the ghouls without clean water. It's a classic Fallout dilemma. Save your vault or condemn an entire city of ghouls to death by dehydration. If you decide to help the ghouls, you'll need to repair their water pump, ensuring they can survive even after the water chip is gone. If you choose not to, well, Necropolis faces a grim fate. And that's where we leave the tragic story of Vault 12. Once a symbol of hope and protection, it became a twisted laboratory for radiation experiments. Vault-Tec got what it wanted, data on the effects of radiation exposure, but at what cost? The residents of Vault 12 became ghouls, cursed to live with the consequences of a corporation's callous indifference. And Necropolis? It stands as a monument to what happens when those in power play God with people's lives. So the next time you encounter a ghoul, just remember, they didn't ask for this. They're the result of Vault-Tec's insatiable thirst for knowledge and their willingness to sacrifice anyone in the name of progress. And honestly, can you think of anything more human than that? Enjoy your purified water while it lasts, Player 1. Just make sure no one's left the door open.